What up, everybody? Scuffy here, and today, finally getting to my deck list I've been meaning to show off and showcase for quite a while. I say quite a while, I mean like 2 weeks. It's been a while for me to get to it, and then finally to play around with it and test it out. I'm going to be talking about Vettranio Shapura today. As you can see here, he is the Morotoi Custodes, which is the dreadnought equivalent for the Adeptus de Custodes. He recently, I can't say recently, he a couple months ago, a month or two ago, received an update to his ability. His ability used to be 2 energy, and now it costs 1. That's it. That's all that they gave him. But what really spiked my interest in getting back to him and finally getting around to testing him out was actually not necessarily the change into his ability, which was enough for me to want to get to, but I was doing Cash and Vaughn and some other, the new Warlords, the stuff that came out since then, playing around with some Valdor for a bit. No, what actually sparked it for me was the inclusion of the counterattack for the Custodes, which on the whole doesn't seem like it's a lot. It gives +1 to your Warlord this turn. And on the surface of it, Vettranio Shapura is a defensive Warlord. It doesn't last until the end of your opponent's turn. So, you've got to pick and choose. And the deck that I had with Shapura previously, which was not doing good, this 30-21 win rate, before I started playing, before I started with the new changes to the deck, as well as the counterattack inclusion and the change to his ability, he was functioning. I had 1 victory out of 9 games. So these here, maybe 1 out of 8. Yeah, because I've lost 2 games with the new deck. This is all those numbers there. The majority of that is just in the last week, following it out and testing it out. So I retooled the whole deck, and because initially I was like, okay, you got your Custodes stuff, and you've got your key tactics, and then you're banking on cards like the mortar carrier, and using supply lines and Jubok and all those fun things. And that's a premise that can still work, although it can be derailed depending on if you draw it or not. So what I decided to do was kind of take that and twist it a little bit on its head. I didn't have the Paragon Spear in my deck. I didn't have a couple of these cards in my deck, and I found that through the course of playing the deck and tweaking it around, that they came in much more handy than they used to. I could still kept some of the premise of it, but I tooled back on a lot of the Custodes cards and really just kind of kept in key Custodes cards, and beyond that, focused on the 1 or 2 turn burst potential of having a Paragon Spear fueled by a counterattack, in addition to cards such as the Termalis support, support from the Jet Bikes and Michaela Coburnus. But there's a couple cards in here that I included, and I think that they ended up working out better for me in the long run. I got a deck list sent to me from Ruber's Moon when the deck first got when Shapuro first got his ability tanked to 1 instead of 2. And I've got to go back in my notes to look to see how similar these are. I don't think they are entirely similar. I think he relied a lot more on Mechanicum stuff. But the premise was still the same. You're still having guys, you're still having the Sagittarius squad. You're still pumping out end-of-turn damage. You're protecting them, and you're forcing your opponent to play their tactics on your troops rather than your Warlord. Having a Warlord who gains frontline, but also shield in addition to that, really ups the ante. Certain cards, Mount Pharos is nice, but certain cards like the Ambassador Melgator can instantly wreck it. Pyramid of Photep is better in that degree if you can get that out a little bit earlier, for the simple fact that you're constantly getting tactics and your opponent cannot target it. And if you've got your front line out, they can't flank it, and you're always going to be gaining something. There's a couple cards that I could consider putting in here in place of a couple others, but so far I've found that this works very well. You just have to have the right pieces at the right time. I think for a while there I was running a little bit too Custode heavy, and when I say too Custode heavy, I mean only like 4 Custode troops more, but enough where you're not gaining anything from them. They're not offering you anything. So if they don't survive or they just get stunned, you're not benefiting anything. But if your opponent stuns a Sagittarius squad or a mortar carrier or Pharaohs, you're still gaining some momentum. So while I'm talking about the deck, I want to go ahead and do some replays. Just did the Horus Lupercal. I pinned some that really kind of help show the potential of this warlord here. I'm going to go through these right here, these Amon and Santar. We had Bar Knight Legions last night. We had the tournament, 11 players showed up. Good games. Ended up Death Destroyer with his Lucretia, and Caliber Hall knocked me out of the winner's bracket. I took third. Death Destroyer went on to retain his Miodmeister title. But that was a fun time, and I was playing Santar and Amon Toramachian. And that tournament last night, special rules were commons and epics only. So definitely put a pinch on some warlords, forced people to play some interesting choices. We got Fabius Bile, we got Ornitov, Typhon, Calver Hall, Bulvi, Endred Har, Thaddeus Vale. I believe we had Malkarian and Sevatar show up as well, and a couple others. So it was good times. Okay, so let's go ahead into this Kinza. Oh, the Ram was a good one too, but we'll do the Kinza here. Just because that's at the top of the list. So Censure, that's one of those cards that I hadn't initially kept in the deck, and I had brought it back in because as much as Planetary Purge does more damage and potentially could clear out just as many troops, the possibility of late game Censure doing 3 damage across the board just guaranteed, whether that is for 9 or 0, depending on how many tactics your opponent has played and how many turns you've drawn the game. I found that actually works out pretty well. Now this Kinza is kind of playing I can't say unorthodox, he's just playing White Scars, but he's relying on a lot of troops, and I don't like that troop copying my tactics, right? Especially given the fact of the tactics that I have in my deck. So the counterattack in this way, in this game, serves as a way to get rid of early game jukebox or little threats like that. One thing that's interesting that I didn't really realize, because I was building the idea with this deck with always having counterattack, I didn't realize that Shapura is a medium initiative warlord. I thought he was low, and that might have been something that they changed that I just didn't notice or realize, or maybe it's always been that way. But he ended up, the 50% of the time you're not going to get that counterattack, and the deck without the counterattack still works very well, but the counterattack just adds that huge extra layer here. I think we see that in the ROM matchup. But when you get the Paragon Spear, now you can attack and shield up after the fact, or shield and attack. It really kind of depends on how you want to do that. That's always been an option, right? That's always been the way that he could go about and do it. But this time, it's with the addition of counterattack that throws up the threat level, and the fact that he's got a 1 energy cost versus a 2 energy cost means that you can do that combo with 3 energy a lot more easier after you've played the Paragon Spear, especially if you play the Paragon Spear on curve. Now the big thing with Shapura, and I've got I think I've got 2 Pi Alphas in the deck as a result, is healing. Healing and stun removal specifically, because if they stun either your Custodes troops or your Warlord who is protecting something key, you want to be able to remove that stun. So the healing is very important. But also having the ability to protect your troops like Duke Mortgature. If your opponent has used their hard removal or their Ambassador Melgator and you throw down Duke Malkarian, you're locking in the potential for board removal. This is a good example of just some of those key cards coming out. Like if he's got hard removal, I'm hosed, but I'm banking on him using his ability to put him back into his hand. He's going to try to target my Warlord as best he can. I've got that preternatural skill. That's going to buy me very valuable time. Now he's got quick reaction, quick reflexes on his turn. I'm just healing up, and that's all he played. Shouldn't skip past that turn. So he's thinking, okay, well, I'll just heal for 4 when I attack you. And the burst damage is all there. It's everything that I need. I've got Michaeler, and then I throw out an Auric. That is the classic Custodes combo, right? That's not anything different. But I think early in the game, having the ability to shield with Shapura, and that last turn having the ability to shield, and have precog on there as well, that really protects a lot. And the great thing with the precog is if you use it when you're shielded, because when you play your ability, you become shielded, but you also become frontline. So you are drawn to the front. So you really have to be smart about that, because giving yourself shield is great, but if it pulls you out of protection range, it doesn't do you any good. But if you've got precog and you're shielded in frontline, it doesn't matter. Your opponent can't attack you regardless. So that's something to consider. This ROM matchup was a good matchup here too. I don't think it goes too terribly long. Jubok is a great one to start with. You don't want to throw him down on 3 energy, because you can protect him with 4, but against ROM it's not going to matter much anyways. So Ekratrez tends to be the better bet for healing. You could probably argue that a Manifest Destiny could go into this deck, and I'll take a look at the deck list when we're done here again, and we'll kind of give you some suggestions on potential cards that you're going to want to consider if you want to improve it, or if you want to take basically what you've got in your own. I'm finding though that Shapura works really well. He works really well, not just with the Custodes cards, which, to be honest, there's just several key Custodes cards that make or break the faction at this point in time. There's not a lot else to them. But the fact that he's got that extra layer of buff that really forces your opponent to blow either an attack on him or a card on him. Yes, I took 8, and he took 2 from his Warlord, but I stuffed him with the energy, and that makes all the difference, right? So I'm going to protect it again. I'll take 4, sure, but I'm going to go ahead and heal up a little bit, and we'll just sit back. Now we're even Steven again, and he's going to have to take 3 if he wants to attack, and because I've choked out his energy, and this is a standard play, I'm not hurt too badly. Here at all. And I've got enough to throw out Michaeler down here, but I don't want to do Michaeler without the spear. So we'll wait. We've got the counterattack. We've got the spear. We're going to pump up our health. And we're just going to get ready. We're going to get ready with this Benediction at a reduced cost. I can actually throw down Telemann even earlier. Although, I don't know if I actually will in this game. I can't recall if that's what I did or if I used Auric and Michaeler, because that's a 6-8 energy combo I really want to pull off to end the game. That might be what I end up doing here. I think I used the Hunting Eagles. Yeah. Shield up. Yep. And I'll give him Maintenance 1. Force a Threat. And this is going to be a good game coming up here pretty soon. Because as long as I'm alive and kicking, then he doesn't have many options here, and I'm just about got enough to do it, and I think that puts me over it with Michaeler Auric, the spear, check and check. We've got right there across the board, that's 5. I'm going to throw out that. On my counterattack, that's 6. Auric's going to do 6. And then with my Warlord attacking, I can do up to another 12. So that's how that works. That's a Custodes combo. You can do that with any of them. You can do that with, Tarmakian, Valdor, Nassau. That's not anything new. What's really new is just being able to protect those guys. Having that turn to be able to protect that swooping eagle or hunting eagle, make all the difference between his possessed marine or anything else that he threw out there. He's not going to be able to flank it. He can't just get rid of it. He had to put a troop down and then cycle a troop. And while he had the ability to use Terran Reality, he couldn't deal with it any other way. And there's always the possibility that I could just draw it back up again. We've got another one here. Horus, Kyrus, Kabanda. That was a good game. Yeah, let's do the Kabanda. That was good. That was pretty stiff. It seems like a very obvious, straightforward win there in regards with Kabanda, because you've got shield, right? You can protect yourself. He has to attack you. But the Ruinstorm troops, Ruinstorm faction as a whole, is very brutal, very powerful. What you're going to see here is you're going to see a very efficient tooling of this deck. First off, Tamala support at 3 is nice. You don't necessarily want to play them too early, but having them that early, being able to play them at 4 energy, could be enough to make a difference. Seal Pack isn't going to do anything for me this game. That's fine. So be it, right? Dun, 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 dun. See if I fast forward here a little bit. No, we'll go ahead and lock it. We'll lock it. And with his 3, he's going to either have to attack my Warlord at 3 just to break the shield, or he's going to have to sneak attack and then hit my Warlord for 3, or he can just deal with 5. He uses his counterattack, which lowers the cost of my censure, which is great. I'll take the 4. I've got the Auric Mortalis to clear the board. Now you'll note I'm not going to be drawing any cards here, but I've got Mortar Carrier on my end coming up on my next turn, so whether or not I draw cards, it won't matter. I'm doing the damage that I need to be doing. I'm going to be doing more damage with the support card as well as my troop, and then put the threat down to do that either again on my next turn, and follow up with the Helios Mortar Carrier, or I could do Trajanar if I want to throw out that way and get rid of a front line. So lots of options there. And that's really what, at that point, when you have a Warlord who can protect these troops, especially against a faction that doesn't have a lot of access to the neutral cards that flank, hard vehicle removal or anything like that. They've got their own cards within the Ruinstorm faction, but beyond that, that's it. That's all they've got. So yeah, it's gonna be hurtful. And that right there is enough between the censure and my two units and my bike. I've got enough right there to beat them out by 10, and I only played a handful of cards to do it. It didn't take much, right? Not much at all. And yeah, it's kind of straightforward because that's what a defensive deck does. And yeah, you got a card earlier than he did, but Ruinstorm is Ruinstorm. It's pretty powerful, and that's not just Kabanda. I think there was a Kyrus in there too. Was that a Kyrus in the battle records that I saw, or was that against the Aramon deck? Yeah, Kyrus right there. So it works. It works against Ruinstorm. It's just very careful, delicate plays. The Kyrus game was really good too, actually, but that's a longer one. And I've shown 3 so far. I don't want to burn you out or make you lose your interest. Let's digest this deck a little bit more. First off, I found that abandoned supplies is not necessarily crucial, but super nice. There's a variety of cards here that, yes, you could use supply lines, but it's at 3 energy. I would much rather be putting down Equitrez, or paying 1 and using a abandoned supplies or whatever the case may be, tanking up. And that 2 energy can either pull me a tactic, it can pull me a vehicle, it can pull me, a non tactic vehicle, or it can pull me some troops with the potential of lowering those costs. And that actually goes a lot more. I'd love to have Pyramid of Photep at 3 energy versus having, Helios Mortar Carrier at 4. Well, that's not a bad play. There's a lot of answers to Mortar Carrier at 4. There's not a lot of answers to Pyramid of Photep at 3. Same goes for Duke Mortimer. There is, roughly 2 to 3 answers because he doesn't have ward, but if your opponent doesn't answer him, it's huge. With Helios Mortar Carrier, there's a couple other plays that your opponent can play, either be flanking, vehicle destruction, crack grenades, stuff like that. So that's why I like Abandoned Supplies. If you wanted to, you could go supply lines, but I wouldn't suggest it. Pi Alpha, as a troop, healing 3, but also removing stun is very nice. And the reason I keep it in versus Wonders of Terra is for the fact that he is a troop. And if he is not killed by your opponent on their turn, you could very easily throw down Michaela Coburnus next to him and give him +2 attack and throw him out there for 4 attack against your opponent. So that's why I have him in there versus a tactic. Sagittarius Squad, very self-explanatory. Tremella Squad, again, these guys put in work. They do very well for the bodies that they are. They're not super fantastic, but if you combine them with the Paragon Spear, that's the way to go. Now, if you don't have Paragon Spear, you're really going to want to build it differently. There are several cards in here that I included because I included Spear in this deck. Before, I didn't have Spear in the deck. I had 1 Termalis. I certainly only had 1 Auric Mortalis, just as a standard. I did not have 2. I included both of those in there as a result of that. Coburnus I had in there, but I found that he's much better off offensive than defensive. If you try to throw him behind your Warlord late game and stall, it's not going to do you any good. Your opponent's going to have a lot of answers to get rid of him before they even have to attack your Warlord. So it's just better off throwing him down with the Spear combo. Maybe in the future there will be things to change with regards to the Custodes card pool, but for now that's really the case. And then I would say Mount Pharos I chose over... the reason I took Mount Pharos over Forge Complex is for the fact that the Astartes are just a little bit better than the Mechanicum stuff. The Mechanicum stuff that the Forge Complex can put out is fantastic. It's great. And the fact that it's a non-counterable card is good too, but the fact that Shapura can protect Mount Pharos from flankers is big. If Mount Pharos gets poisoned, if it gets destroyed, if your opponent has to play lots of tactics to get rid of it, so be it. That's the way it goes. You have to really depend on your matchup that you're playing. You could easily put that in with a Forge Complex, or if you don't have that, if barring that, you could put in the new Cultist Generator. Although I think you're going to get less impact with Cultist Generator while it creates the Eightfold Brand. While the Eightfold Brand creates some really good cult troops in your deck, none of them are necessarily ones that you need to protect with Shapura's ability. So there'll be a little bit disjoint there, but you're still getting card advantage. You need to have several cards that are giving you cards to really benefit or break from the Custodes, the Sentinel lock, right? Having Telema Dreadnought is great, but if he sits out there for 2 or 3 turns stunned and you're losing cards, it's not going to do any good. However, if you're gaining cards or you've built up a large hand because of Mount Pharos or Jubok or Pyramid of Photep, expanding your options. Most importantly, expanding your options with stuff that your opponent cannot anticipate. Your opponent is going to anticipate your Hunting Eagles. They're going to anticipate your Telemon Dreadnought and your Trajaner bikes. They're not going to anticipate what you copy from their deck. They're not going to be able to anticipate any of the tactics that the Pyramid of Photep can produce, or that Mount Pharos, the Astartes that Mount Pharos can give you. Now, that being said, those are all legendary cards. And I understand that. And you look at this deck list here. This is not a cheapy deck. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 legendaries in this deck. That's a third of this deck, just about, is legendary. So it is rare intensive. I think some of the legendaries can be replaced. Like I said, I think you could put in the Eightfold Brand in there. Ambassador Melgator, while he's nice, is not required. You could easily throw in something else in place of that. Michaela Coburnus is most likely if you're going to be playing with Spear, but if you're not playing with Spear, if you're going to be playing with more vehicles, then by all means consider using more Mechanicum troops to really enhance your Sagittarius squad, be that with either the Peltasts, the Secretary, the Sibyllins. Most importantly, these guys here, Alpha Theta and Laz Towel. I think if you're lacking legendary troops, these guys create mechindrites, which is great, and Laz Towel pumps all your mech stuff. They go hand in hand very easily. And that just, I mean, if you're going that route and you want to put in one Forge Complex versus 3 legendaries, that's certainly a good way to go. In addition to that, you've got cards such as Sigma Phi for jamming. You've got some awesome front lines, and you've got this great Kai Mu 25 Rhino, who right now is sealing out play. He heals 2 and he removes poison from adjacent units, which is great because poison is out there with Gorbaks, and even Mortarion is getting a little bit more love and play out there. So that's an option. It's something to consider. Are they costly? Yes, but if you're building your deck and you're theming around that, then dive into it. I went the other way. I went with Spear in mind. I found that, again, building it with the idea of having counterattack most of the time, it works out really well. And I think this is a good example of considering your options when you're building your deck. Kind of going back into the old video I put up, Science of Deck Building. Check it out. It's in the training cage. It's a little bit long and lengthy, but if you're wondering how you go about building a deck or the best ways to do it or how I do it, take a look at it. It's certainly not this is the way to do it, but this is just my approach and how I look at things. So having a counterattack card to consider when you're building it with a medium or low initiative warlord, and just thinking, okay, if I can do that just for the one turn or the that I need it when I need it, is it going to be more powerful? Can I make that counterattack card more impactful than just deal 1 damage or reduce the cost of a card by 1 or heal 2 to a unit or my warlord, whatever the case may be? The answer in the Custodes department is yes. That counterattack, giving +1 to your warlord, doesn't seem like a whole lot, but oops, going back in here, I want to view. There we go. Custodes, all cards. That's what I wanted to view. Giving +1 to your warlord doesn't seem like a lot, but when you have cards that enhance that with either increasing their attack by more or dealing their damage across the board or giving them even more attack and bloodthirst, it takes it to another level. And it's a one-time use, but it can be super effective. So that's it, guys. That's Shapura. I know he's out there. I know not a lot of people are playing him, but he's a Dreadnought. I enjoy playing Dreadnoughts. I've had a lot of fun with him. Again, some really good success. I think doing the math, his win rate, I think previously I had him at, it was like a 12% win rate or so. And I've taken him up to a 68% win rate based off of current numbers. And I feel really proud about that. I feel really good about that. And I think it's something I wanted to share with everybody. Give some people some options. Now, does he play as fast as, the stuff that's out there right now? I think a lot of people are encountering Warp Retreat, Raven Guard. People are encountering, Ruin Storm and the like. He's burst potential. He's combo driven. Is he as fast as that? It might depend on your deck a little bit. You might have to tweak it out a little bit, but the fact that he can put out that numbers and protect those things and maybe force your opponent to play differently, breaking up how they target you, your troops or your units, or breaking up how they change things around, that's a good way to go. It shakes things up. Whether you're playing it in meta or ladder or in practice, if you want to try something new, there are over, as of the end of this event, if we end up with Lord of Flies, there are going to be over 100 warlords in the game, and that's a lot of warlords. That's a lot of options. that is a lot of options to play with and expand on, and everybody should be trying to try new things. Try new things and have fun. So that's it for me, guys. Hope it was worth watching. If you liked it, hit the like. If you haven't already subscribed, please go ahead and do so, or spread the word if you know other people who are looking for some insight or some options, or just some expanding some of the knowledge that they've got in terms of how they play the game. That's all I can ask. So until next time, keep playing Legions.